So, Amanda, if you want to, like I said earlier, I'm Jake Schmidt. I'm on the Wisconsin Lakes Board of Directors, and I also serve on various boards as well. And I am a water resources specialist in Walworth County. And then we are joined tonight by Alan from Waukesha County, and I'll let Alan introduce himself.
Thanks, Jake. So my name is Alan Barrows. I serve as the Land Resources Manager for Waukesha County. Been in that role since 2021, but I've worked for the county since 2002. I do oversee the county's aquatic invasive species program, as well as a number of other sort of environmental programs. I do serve on the board of directors for Lake Country Clean Waters Association, and I've done that for a number of years. And like Jake, I am a graduate of the Wisconsin Lake Leaders Institute, Crew 12 from 2018. So if there's other lake leaders in this meeting tonight, welcome. Just a little bit about Lake Country Clean Waters Association. It acts as an educational platform for lake and river associations, lake districts, conservation groups, municipalities, and community members to hear and discuss important water topics. Tonight's program examines the importance of aquatic invasive species and the research that we do. And we're going to give a number of different perspectives and points of view. I'd like to introduce Amanda Schmitz, our Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator. So take it away.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I know some of the people that I've seen come in, so hello to those of you that I know, and nice to virtually meet you to those that I haven't. I'm Amanda Schmitz. I serve as the Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator, or AIS Coordinator for short, for Waukesha County as well as Washington County. I've been in this role a little over 3 years at this point, since early 2022. And I have a background in water resources management in Southeast Wisconsin. So very familiar with the area. I've worked here for a number of years at this point on lakes and rivers and the associated issues with that. So just to start out, kind of what are AIS? I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the topic, at least kind of surface level. But for those of you who aren't, or just to give a little overview, an aquatic invasive species is essentially a non-native species that has no natural predators. They're able to outcompete native species for space and resources, and they're often very aggressive, prolific, and mature very early and quickly. So what kind of impacts do AIS have? So people tend to think, or at least for this group, I would assume, tend to think of the ecological impacts, right? So impacting native fish, invertebrates, plants, impacting their habitat, food resources, things like that. But there are also really big economic and recreational impacts as well. So you can get economic impacts to sport and commercial fishing, to tourism. Tourism and fishing often depends on healthy, clean waters. So if you have something that is kind of like a degraded water body, people are less likely to want to come visit it and recreate on the water. And with that, the local economy can kind of take a hit from it as well, especially if it's a very water-based economy. Sometimes property values can also decrease due to aquatic invasive species. And then recreationally, like I said, boating, fishing, swimming, people tend to not like to swim in a bunch of weeds, right? So that's kind of the idea behind that. There are impacts beyond that kind of ecological impact of invasives.
So how did Waukesha County build its program? Well, it all really started for us in 2016 with the discovery of starry stonewort in the Muskego Lakes. It really got the attention of the elected officials, the scientists, the citizens, and there was a real outcry that came to us and said, well, what is Waukesha County going to do about this? And at the time, again, we didn't have a program. We have other lakes-related programs, so we were aware that there were species in our lake country lakes. But we didn't have a coordinator like Amanda, and we certainly didn't have a strategic plan. So our first step was to get a grant from the Wisconsin DNR to develop a plan. And we worked with Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, Sewer PAC for short, to develop this plan. The plan was completed in 2016, so it was denoted as the 2017 plan. And that was the plan that we've been running with for years and years. One of the interesting components of this, and we were really looking at Washington County Strategic Plan as a model going into the planning effort, was in lieu of creating paper maps in the plan, we created an interactive mapping system. And the mapping system allowed for us to take real live survey results from meander surveys and point intercept surveys and cross that with state DNR related GIS layers. And it served us very well. We probably didn't get a ton of views, but it was a way that as additional information comes into the county, that we're able to populate that out into a public interface and update our maps versus having paper maps on file that were out of date, probably the day that they were printed. What else did we do? Well, we partnered with Washington County, and so we jointly have a aquatic invasive species coordinator. But we've also been hiring summertime interns, and that program has changed over time in terms of what the roles of the interns are. At first, we had one full-time intern, and then we moved into two full-time interns. And currently, what we do is we've got one full-time intern and then up to about 9 part-time interns that serve as watercraft inspectors on behalf of lake associations and lake districts that are out there interacting with the folks launching boats at the launches. And that's been a real hit of a program. And I'll go into more about how that program works during this presentation. But that's sort of the backdrop in terms of how we got into the program. And I have to tell you, the feedback that I receive from people is that people really like our program. And so getting an opportunity to sit in front of you folks tonight to spread the word about our program and what we're up to really just helps us get the word on the street about what you can do to address. And we really do take an educational focus to it, less so in terms of like enforcement. We want to teach people how to stop the spread of aquatic invasive species. So after 2017, when our strategic plan was in place, and then also having a AIS coordinator, the funding up to 2021 was largely provided through the Wisconsin DNR's AEPP grant. And AEPP stands for
Education Planning Prevention.
Aquatic Education Planning and Prevention Grant. And it was a great way for us to fund our program. That funding, it was a 3-year cycle, and we would get approximately $50,000 a year, which was enough for us to have a program. Since 2022, our program has been partially funded through a new grant opportunity called the Lake Monitoring and Protection Network, or LMPN for short. It's a non-competitive grant, but the amount of money available through it is significantly less. Around $18,000 a year of our program is funded through the DNR's grant. We've also partnered with Washington County. It's a 10-year partnership. And so that actually comes to an end February of 2026. And I'm in communications with my counterparts in Washington County to talk about what the next generation of our partnership looks like. We've also partnered with lakes groups, as I mentioned earlier, through intergovernmental agreements, which allows for us to hire and train watercraft inspectors and then set them free for the summer to go work with the lake to provide those inspection requirements or inspection needs for those lakes. This has been a great program. And again, I'll go into the mechanics of how this program works a little bit more during this presentation. The current costs for the Waukesha County program, including the coordinator, the interns, supplies, is around $78,000 per year. Just me.
Yeah, you can do the introduction feedback.
Okay. So our 2017 strategic plan served a great purpose for us and really gave us the vision that we needed to have a successful program. But we realized it was time for an update. So in the spring of 2024, Amanda coordinated this. She gathered an advisory committee, a group of professionals, lake residents, and nonprofit group members to review the original AIS strategic plan. She hosted 4 virtual meetings to discuss changes made to each chapter of the plan. And then the new plan is just about ready for rollout. We're doing final edits on it, but it will be out and published to our website this year. So that's sort of the backdrop in terms of the way that we put together our program and are looking to the future for what's next, what's coming, what threats exist, to keep us nimble enough to be able to apply for the grants necessary and to respond as new species are discovered in our county.
Okay, so one of the main updates that we made to our strategic plan is what you're seeing here. So what this image is depicting is called the pathways approach to AIS management. This is something that the DNR rolled out fairly recently within their last AIS strategic plan update. And essentially it's targeting these specific pathways that are introductions for aquatic invasive species in Wisconsin. So we've incorporated this into our updated strategic plan. Especially in our area, the recreational activities and service providers and the organisms in trade are kind of big areas of focus. So the service providers, you can think of like the people that install your docks and your piers on your lake. And organisms in trade, that is pet shops, exotic pet owners, aquatic pet owners. I'm sure you've all heard at some point in time about somebody finding an alligator in the lake or some, goldfish in their pond or something. And that tends to happen from people releasing their exotic pets into the wild. A lot of people think that's like the ethical thing to do, which it's not. Please don't do that. But it's a common thing that people do, and it can have a lot of issues for the environment. And some of those species can become aquatic invasive species too if they end up establishing themselves. So those are kind of 2 main ones for our area of the state, but we are incorporating all of these things in our plan update and in our future work as well. Okay, so some of the accomplishments of our program. So Alan mentioned the Clean Boats, Clean Waters program, and I think that we, not to boast here, but I think we out of the state have a very extensive and successful Clean Boats, Clean Waters program. Like Alan stated, we partner with lake districts and lake associations to be able to provide Clean Boats, Clean Waters inspectors to them. A lot of groups don't have the infrastructure really to hire their own people or pay their own people, insurance, payrolls, things like that. So we kind of take on that aspect of it to make it easier for people to implement this program. This is a really easy program to get started. So the DNR offers grants for this up to $4,000. They're non-competitive, so you can pretty much apply, and I haven't heard of one getting refused yet, so that would be a surprise to me. There are also free trainings. I offer usually 3 or more, sometimes trainings in the spring for Clean Boats, Clean Waters. And there's also trainings all around the state, including virtual ones online. So really easy to get familiarized with this program. With this program, there's been a large increase in AIS awareness and awareness of AIS-related laws, which I'll touch on a little bit later. It's also a really good program for natural resources students to kind of get a foot in the door career-wise. We hire a lot of people, like Alan stated, for summer interns for this type of job, and those people can kind of get that hands-on experience working in the field, talking to people, communicating science, and that gives them a good kind of launching pad into a career in natural resources. So all in all, it's a really excellent program. And for Waukesha County, we've had a really big increase over the years since the inception of Clean Boats, Clean Waters And you can see these numbers here, they've continued to increase. 2020 and 2021 were a little bit weird because of COVID. So you might see in some of these graphs, there's like a big jump in 2020 or 2021. That was people getting out on the water and going to parks during COVID. But you can see here our inspection hours have increased a lot and continue to either stay steady or increase. The number of boats that we've inspected in the county over the years continues to increase a lot as well. And the number of people that are contacted every year continues to increase too. I think the highest number on here is over 14,000 people in a year, which is a ton of people. So really good, kind of that like one-on-one face-to-face contact that we're getting with people. Some more of our accomplishments. So I'm just using this past year as an example. So in 2024, we did a ton of survey work in my 2 counties. So 7 point intercept surveys, and I'll explain what all these surveys are in the next slide. The 7 point intercepts, 17 early detections, 42 launch surveys, and then 2 Asian clam and freshwater mussel surveys. So in early detection, what is that? So essentially we are getting out on the water, whether that is a lake, a stream, or a wetland, and we're going around the entire water body or entire stretch of stream, checking at specific locations for aquatic invasive species. So for a lake, actually for all of these, you want to hit a minimum of 5 survey points. We always do a lot more than that, especially lakes in lake country tend to be quite large. So we hit, you know, sometimes 20 points in a lake if we're monitoring it. But we're kind of going around that perimeter of the lake or the areas that the plants will grow in, you know, maybe up to 20 feet, and monitoring those spots. And we write down densities of species found, types of species found, and just kind of notes about what the ecosystem is looking like in general. So with early detections, the one I just explained is like a full early detection survey, but we can also do kind of a condensed version of that, where we'll go to boat landings and we'll just inspect 5 sites around the landing. Reason being is that the boat landing is typically where things are going to be introduced first, since people are kind of coming and going, transporting species. So if we can monitor, I think, what did this say? 42 launches this year, you know, that's us getting a really good idea of what's going on at those points of introduction for species. Point intercept survey. So some of you are familiar with this. Some of you probably are like, what am I looking at? So essentially what this is, it's a quantitative survey to identify aquatic plants and their densities lake-wide. So in this example, this is Silver Lake in Waukesha County. So what we do is we put a grid over the entire lake. We go from point to point with latitude, longitude points, and we sample the aquatic plants at every single point on the lake. So we can say, you know, what plants are present at this exact point, how dense are these plants, you know, it's a really good picture of lake-wide what's going on over time, especially if you do these. A lot of people or a lot of groups tend to do them every 5 years or so. And so that gives a good over time idea of what the plant communities are doing. Also really helpful in making decisions for aquatic plant management and just lake management decisions in general. Another program that we do is purple loosestrife biocontrol. So purple loosestrife is that big showy purple flower that you see on the side of the highway in the summer, usually July and August. Really, really nasty plant. Honestly, it's beautiful, but it is a pain. So with the biocontrol program, we raise these little beetles that you see in the pictures here. They're called Galaricella or Sella beetles. They're really teeny tiny, you know, yay big. And we raise these beetles and we release them into larger patches of purple loosestrife. And these beetles are selective eaters, so they only feed on the purple loosestrife. So it really helps keep those populations down in a way that's not using chemicals, it's not labor intensive, and it really is overall just pretty simple to do this program. In 2024, we raised over 80,000 beetles, and about 25,000 of those were raised by volunteers at Retzer Nature Center. There are also wild beetle populations now in Wisconsin. There's a number of them within my 2 counties that I know of, which is pretty cool. And like I said, overall, this program is really easy to be involved in. So if you know of a purple loosestrife infestation or you're dealing with one and or simply if you're just interested in getting involved in this program in some way, feel free to reach out to me. My contact info will be at the end. And we would be happy to get you involved in that. And here's just a kind of a brief list of some educational events that we've done. Like Alan mentioned, this program is very education-based. We like to educate people, talk to them, teach them how to do things in a proper way, or teach them what the laws are and why they matter. So these are a few of the events that we've attended in the few years that I've been here, and they're always really fun. People are always really interested. We usually have jars of dead things that people like looking at. They're very intrigued by it, and it's a good talking point to get them interested in this topic. So, AIS in Lake Country. So, like I said, most of you are probably familiar with at least one AIS species. And if you weren't before, you probably are now looking at this screen. So things like zebra mussels, Eurasian water milfoil, those are aquatic invasive species, and they're very prevalent in our area. So aquatic invasive species in general tend to be a lot more common in Southeast Wisconsin than other parts of the state. And there's a few reasons for that. Geographically, we're very close to a large population density. So the greater Milwaukee area is the densest population in Wisconsin. And then beyond that, really, Chicago is not that far away. There's a lot of people that live in this general area. And this area is also very popular for tourism. A lot of people come up here, come up north, if you will, to visit our lakes here and recreate on them. So it is very popular place to be. We're also located close to major ports as well. So Milwaukee and Chicago, anywhere really along Lake Michigan that things are coming into the state. That can be a really big vector of spread. So kind of all those things combined make it so our area is a bit more susceptible to aquatic invasive species just because it is a bit more heavily trafficked than other areas of the state. With AIS, they're often very costly and labor intensive to manage. If you've ever tried to scrape zebra mussels off your pier or pull weeds out of the lake by your house, you know, it's not the most fun thing, and it can be really frustrating, and they tend to come back really quickly too. So with that, we also have a lot of inter-county, interstate, and international travel to and from our lakes. And I have a really cool map on the next slide that Alan is going to show you.
Okay, I'm going to show my hand a minute because I'm admittedly a map nerd. And if you had looked at our 2017 strategic plan, you would have seen some similar maps that were very impactful for me. And I thought it was time to do a refresh on it. So here's what this map is showing. When you are interacting with a Clean Boats, Clean Waters watercraft inspector, one of the questions they will ask you is, where else have you had your boat in the last 5 days? So we pulled the data out of the SWIMS database that represents the results of that question being asked, and duplicates were removed. So that it's if one lake was mentioned and it was representative, we didn't put multiple lines on there. However, looking at the data, we decided to grab 2 particular lakes. We grabbed Lake Nagawicca and Phantom Lake. And, you know, as Amanda was just speaking to just before about this pathways approach, I think that this map does a nice job representing those interconnections and those vectors, if you will, of how species can travel from one lake to another. And so There is a lot more data available, but I think in its simplicity, it tells a pretty important story for everybody to understand is where these species are coming from and where they may be going. What we also did in conjunction with this map was we made a map of not just Waukesha County, but other locations both in the state of Wisconsin and out of the state of Wisconsin. We left the line work on for the Waukesha County line, so you see a bit of a spider web right within our county. But now look and see that same question, where else have you had your boat in the last 5 days? Look at what the results showed, which includes Canada, the Mississippi River, the Wisconsin River, many locations around the state. Why do we care about this? Well, one of the reasons why we selected the 2 lakes that we did is because they're popular fishing tournament locations. So it does draw a lot of people into those 2 lakes, which then could be jumping off points to lakes just down the street. And again, there's a lot of more data that goes along with this, but we wanted to include it because I think it tells a really important story.
Right, I'm going to take just a couple minutes to chat about some aquatic invasives that are near or newly introduced to lake country. I'm not going to touch on all 4 of them here just for time's sake. I am going to talk about New Zealand mud snails and quagga mussels. This middle picture on the slide here with the fishing line and the goo on the fishing line, that is spiny water fleas, which are a very small zooplankton species. They're currently only found in the Madison chain of lakes and then up in Lake Superior. So not here yet, but nearby. And then the upper right-hand corner is a plant called flowering rush. This can be an emergent plant, so it'll stick out of the water with this showy flower, or it can be a completely submerged plant too. And we recently found the first population of flowering rush in Waukesha County, I want to say 2 years ago, on the Bark River. So that is one that is kind of newly coming to our area. I'm gonna just touch a little bit more in depth on these 2 species though. So the New Zealand mud snail, that's this really, really teeny tiny snail that you're seeing in these pictures. Yes, they are actually that small. We had our first finding of New Zealand mud snails in Waukesha County this past summer. It was in Pebble Creek, which is just south of the city of Waukesha. This species has a very low rate of occurrence in Wisconsin, so there's really a handful of places that it's even found in Wisconsin. So it is very much kind of an up-and-coming invasive species that we have. It's a lot more common in the western part of the US. So you might see like the Rocky Mountains have this species really bad. There's some areas out by like Idaho, Montana that have this species really bad as well. So like I said, they're incredibly, incredibly small, so very difficult to spot. They can be really easily transported on people's boots. So if people are like wading fishermen, right? They can get them stuck in their waders, in their boots, and then have no idea. They could just think it's like a little rock or something, and really easily transport that from place to place. This species, like most invasive species, competes directly with native species and disrupts food sources. They can carpet riverbeds. So in Pebble Creek, we did some monitoring out there in October, and it was, I hate to say it, it was already kind of bad. It was pretty carpeted. We would pick up a rock and it was just like, it felt like textured because there were so many on it. So really quite prolific species. They're also generally too small for fish to feed on them. Fish might try to eat them, but they're so small they have barely any nutritional substance to them, and oftentimes the fish will carry it in their gut and then poop it out somewhere else and it's still alive, and so transporting a live species. So overall, not a great thing that they're here, but I'm grateful that we know that they're here. They were also discovered by a volunteer stream monitor, actually. So huge shout out to our volunteers that do monitoring, because we likely would not have found this for a while yet. So with this species, they are also notoriously hard to decontaminate for. So you may have heard of people spraying their equipment with bleach water or using boot brushes, things like that. So bleach water, unfortunately, does not work on New Zealand mud snails. They are very, very resilient. We have found that Formula 409, which you can get for like $2 or something at Menards, it works well against them. It does kill them. So if you are someone who does a lot of wading, fishing, or just, wading in streams in general, it might be worth investing in a boot brush and maybe some spray to clean your stuff off. It's helpful in preventing the spread for these. As far as 2025, we are planning on installing a boot brush station at Pebble Creek. So if people are coming and going from there, they can at least do the minimum and clean their boots off when they're leaving, when they're coming and going. We're also doing some further downstream monitoring of Pebble Creek this year. So some other streams kind of in that area, in addition to what we did this fall. So hopefully hopefully they haven't moved, but monitoring if they have moved and keeping track of that, if that is the case. Quagga mussels. So a lot of you are probably familiar with zebra mussels. So those little shells that get stuck on your boats and your piers. So quagga mussels are very similar to zebra mussels. They're basically like cousins. They're just a different species. Zebra mussels tend to be a bit bigger, a bit paler in color, and I have a comparison picture in the next slide to show you. They tend to prefer colder, deeper water. So you may have heard that they have kind of taken over the Great Lakes ecosystems in lieu of the zebra mussel. They tend to just do better in that ecosystem. And so unfortunately, this past summer, we had our first inland finding of quagga mussels, and that was in Lake Geneva in Walworth County. It is a significant finding because it is the first time that we've seen them inland and not in the Great Lakes or the Mississippi River. So it's something we're certainly keeping our eye on, and we want to know where that's going, if that's going anywhere from that point. So this is just a little comparison. I apologize, it's a little bit blurry, but on the left here, we have a zebra mussel. On the right, we have a quagga mussel. I usually tell people the main way to tell them apart is that zebra mussels are going to sit flat on their bottom. You can kind of see it in this picture. They have a very flat bottom. And quagga mussels are a lot more curved, almost like a boat, like a canoe. And so they're always going to topple over if you try to set them down. Otherwise, quaggas tend to be a bit brighter, a bit like tan in color. The stripes on quaggas are more circular, whereas the zebra mussels are very kind of zigzag patterned. But if you are concerned that you have found a quagga mussel, certainly take some pictures, send it over to me. I'm happy to come out and look at anything as well, because this is, I mean, it's a tough thing to grasp even for people who look at these all day. So if you're just not even familiar with mussels at all, you could look at this and be like, what am I looking at? I don't even know. So I'm certainly happy to help with that. And that being said, invasive mussels are actually very, very easy to monitor for. So if you are interested in doing some very simple monitoring, you can do that with just a brick and a piece of rope. So if you live on a lake, essentially all you have to do is tie a rope around a brick and lower it down into the water. Typically you'll lower it till it hits the bottom, lift it up about a foot so it's dangling. And then the invasive mussels, if they are present, they'll congregate on that brick. And you can check that throughout the summer, usually monthly, and see kind of what's going on there. In a lot of lakes in our area, you will have a lot of zebra mussels on there, but you can also keep an eye out if you're like, that one looks a little bit different. Take a picture of it, take it off, put it in a baggie or something. Let me know about it. But this is a really easy way that you can monitor and be a bit proactive about quagga mussels without being super involved or super expert on the issue. So there is a video from UW Extension. I'm not going to play it on here, but I have it linked in a form that will get sent out to you guys at the end of this presentation. It's basically just going over everything I just said, like how to do the brick monitoring. It's a really cool video, certainly recommend it, but I won't play it now just for sake of time. So, all that being said, what can you do? It's certainly not all doom and gloom. This topic is very polarizing to a lot of people because it's like, oh, that's really depressing. You know, what are we doing about this? So with AIS, there is aquatic plant management. So you may have heard of people doing harvesting or herbicide applications for like milfoil. So those are all options to manage populations that are already present in a water body. You can also do monitoring, like I mentioned before with the mussel monitoring. We also have volunteer programs that I'll get into a little bit later in the presentation. All good things. Monitoring is really where a lot of our work focuses. You know, we want to see where things are, what they're doing, how they're impacting the ecosystems, and then from there, where they might be going and what might be happening next. There's also Healthy Lakes and Rivers grants. So those are grants sponsored through the Wisconsin DNR, and they provide funding for projects for shorelines, so like best management practices. So rain gardens, I believe fish habitat is included in there, shoreline improvements, things like that. Following the law, decontamination and bait. So I'm sure you've seen those signs at every boat launch, the big red, white, and black signs that are saying, please drain your water, please clean your boats, things like that. That really is important, and it really is kind of the first step in prevention for the spread of these species. They're really simple laws to follow, and if you follow them, you're going to prevent the spread of 99% of these species. And with the bait, I will touch on that in the next slide here. Also, like we mentioned, the Clean Boats, Clean Waters program, super easy to get involved in, and you can do that as a lake group solo. You can do it in partnership with Waukesha, Washington County. It's something really easy that you can do that is also effective preventative steps. So this is the sign I was referring to with that inspect, remove, drain, never move. So this is really all you have to do to prevent the majority spread of aquatic invasive species. So if you are a boater, water recreator, please follow these rules. They are Wisconsin law, and you can get in trouble for not following them. But above all else, they are very simple and they are very effective. On the right-hand side here is a little don't dump bait sign. So a lot of people are not familiar with the fact that bait species can become invasive species or otherwise cause disruptions to the native ecosystem. So if you have baits that you're using to fish, totally fine, but when you're done with it, we really encourage people to throw that in the garbage instead of dumping it in the lake. Alternatively, if you have like a bucket of minnows or something and you introduce any lake water into that, you really need to keep it on that body of water and not be transporting it to other bodies of water as well, because some of the things we deal with are very microscopic. They can be really easily transported via water. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Just really briefly, some of our 2025 projects. So we'll do a lot of that early detection survey work. Again, that's one of the main things that we do throughout the summer. For Purple Loosestrife Biocontrol, I'm starting a project on School Section Lake. They have quite an extensive purple loosestrife patch. It was actually the picture in the first title screen, if you can remember that far back, just all the purple flowers, that is School Section Lake. So I'm going to be releasing some beetles out there this summer. Lake Dunoon has a starry stonewort management project that we're tracking through PI work. So that is the point intercept survey work. And they're doing hand pulling events as well. Pike Lake has a long-term starry stonewort study via point intercept surveys as well that we've been doing for, oh gosh, maybe 6 or 7 years at this point, which is really interesting data. They do no management on that lake, so it's really interesting to see how an untouched lake responds to an invasive species. So that's a fun project. And then the organisms in trade that I mentioned earlier, so that's those pet stores, exotic pets, things like that. We do pet store checks where I'll go in and I'll look at what people have for sale. I'll see if there's any, restricted, prohibited species or anything that looks kind of off or suspicious in their tanks. And just like have a chat with them about it. Provide them with educational resources as well. And this is just a little plug. I know November feels far away, but it'll probably be here before we know it. We're doing an exotic pet surrender event in West Bend on November 29th. So these events happen around the state pretty often, I believe every other weekend. And it's an event where pet owners who own maybe like a turtle or a lizard or a sugar glider. I've seen sugar gliders in there, something that's a little bit more niche than a cat and a dog. They can surrender those animals to an exotic animal rescue, which then takes them and gives them vet care and rehomes them. So great alternative to dumping your turtle in the lake or something like that. So just a plug for that event. Those are really cool events that we have statewide. So Alan mentioned before with the update to our strategic plan, we also updated our mapping application. So he mentioned when you have printed maps, they tend to be out of date pretty much the second that you print them because things are so in flux and changing. So with this application, we're able to upload the data from the water bodies that we monitor throughout the summer. And if you're familiar with the Wisconsin DNR's AIS viewer, it's a similar tool and it actually shares the same layers with the DNR AIS viewer. But the unique thing about ours is that it has specific latitude, longitude data. So you can go in and see specifically where on a lake and what date, what year a certain species was found. I'm going to give you a little run through of this via screenshots because I don't want the internet to crash while I'm on a Zoom here, but I'll give you a little rundown. Also, this link will be provided to you at the end if you want to go click through it at all. So in this example here, I just zoomed in on Silver Lake. So you can see in the right-hand corner, I selected years as my search parameter. So I clicked on 2023. So what it's showing me here is all of the search sites for 2023 for invasive species. And with that, you can also go in and click on each of these dots, and it's going to tell you what those specific dots are representing. There's also a legend on here as well. Couldn't fit it all in one screenshot, but I'll show you kind of throughout here. With this, you can also view by species. So we're going off of that same map in the last slide. So we still have the year selected 2023. And then in species, I went and selected Phragmites. And you can see there's just a one spot with Phragmites on the western side of Silver Lake. And additionally, if you click on that, you can get this information with specific latitude, longitude, the species, the date that it was found, and the location that it was found. So really comprehensive mapping tool, really interesting in my opinion to be able to see like specifically where things are. And I think that is something that the DNR's mapping app is lacking maybe. But yeah, really cool tool. Also, if you are interested in seeing just one species throughout the whole county or throughout a specific area, you can do that as well. So in this one, I chose banded mystery snails. So selected that species, zoomed out to the county level, and you can see all the spots within the county that we found that species over the years. So another cool way to look at it. And then the last little interesting thing on here is that in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little statistics button. So you can zoom into any spot on the map and pull up this statistics button, and it's going to give you a breakdown of all of the species that were found there. So in this example, I did Ashippun Lake. So when you zoom into Ashippun Lake, it's giving you all those dots like it did before. And when you open up this little statistic window, it's giving you a breakdown of percentages of what invasive species are present in that water body. So pretty cool if you're interested in statistics and data. If not, you know, it's a cool graph to look at regardless, but kind of a neat feature that we have on here as well. Okay, I'm gonna let Alan chat about our partnership.
Okay, and I'll just make one other mention about the AIS GIS app that we built. The first one really, I think, functioned its best at the county scale. And I think that there's people who might be interested in what's going on in a county scale. But I think there's also a lot of people that are interested in what's happening on the lake that I live near or that I like to recreate on. So there is a drop-down menu so that if you're not a savvy map expert, you can just pick your lake off of the list and it will automatically zoom in for you. So I really like that addition. Well, again, what I want to talk through is the mechanics of our Clean Boats, Clean Waters partnerships that both Waukesha County does and Washington County. And Amanda touched on this, but I want to reiterate that one of the challenges that lake organizations have is the capacity for payroll, hiring, training, insurance. And through these partnerships, we take all that on. So we do the advertising. And let me not get ahead of myself. I'm going to start with step one. If your lake group has not applied for one of these grants before, there's a pre-application requirement, and that happens in September 15th. So if you're thinking about 2026, put September 15 on your calendar because you need to go through the pre-application for your first time. Then if you make it successfully through pre-application, or you've done this before, then the application for the grant is due November 15th. Now, these are $4,000 grants, or actually it's $3,000 and requires a $1,000 match from the organization. Then in about February, we will sign an intergovernmental agreement between the lake organization and the county. So again, we work with both organizations or both associations and districts on this. And it's the same template agreement. If you're interested in having somebody review what the agreement states, I'm happy to provide that, or Amanda can provide it as well. Then what we're into right now is the hiring process. So right now, Amanda is busy every day interviewing interns. And so I would say that overall, our full-time 40-hour per week internship is the most desirable. So there's a lot of competition for it. But what we're finding is other mostly college students are interested in getting their foot in the door. So they may have a job working somewhere else at a restaurant or a big box store or you name it, but they also want to work on those weekends and get this experience and get the opportunity to work with Amanda and learn and start to build that resume. I can give you a great example of a success story. In 2017, our first AIS intern, her name was Jenna, and she did a wonderful job. She then went over to our parks group and worked there for a little while. And now she works back in my office again as a recycling specialist. So an internship in 2017 led to full-time employment with Waukesha County in the same department. And I think that that's a real awesome story to share. So we walk through the hiring process March through May. We like to bring in the interns before Memorial Day, if possible. Now, sometimes this is challenging because some colleges don't cut kids loose, or I call them kids, students loose. And so sometimes that start date becomes a little bit of a challenge. And I'm seeing earlier and earlier departures back to school. So in some cases, we're seeing students returning back to their colleges and universities in early August. And to tell you the truth, what we do is those that are left, we start to shuffle them around the county and fill in those gaps. the DNR grants are intended to be 200 hours of work or more. And so if we find a lake that doesn't have quite 200 yet, we will start to move our inspectors around from lake to lake. So again, we do the payroll. So they're insured through the county, they're trained by the county, they're paid by the county. And then what we do is we invoice the lake group for that cost. And we do charge an administrative fee, and it's around $400. It's actually 10%. So let's say your bill was $4,000. You get $3,000 in grant money from the state of Wisconsin, and we will send you an invoice generally in the late fall. And then there's a deadline for the data sheets that are from the field watercraft inspections are due into the Wisconsin DNR's SWIMS database by December 31st of the year. And in some cases, the lake organization likes to do that. In other cases, the inspector will do it. And then in some cases, Amanda will pitch in and put that data into the database. So my take-home message on this, for about $1,400, you can have a watercraft inspector at your boat launch every Saturday and Sunday from Memorial Day until Labor Day, 8 hours a day. And I think this is one of the reasons why people like our program. That's good value right there. And so right now we've got about 9 lakes that do this. There's other lakes that don't need the benefit of the county's administration on this. And so we know that there's more watercraft inspections going on there, which I am a big advocate of. All the money from this program, including that administrative fee, goes right back into the program.
And to wrap up here pretty quick, I'm going to give you guys a pretty basic walkthrough of the SWIMS database. So that is the Surface Water Integrated Monitoring System database. That's Wisconsin DNR. It's where all the surface water data in the state goes to. So all of the clean boats, clean waters data, all of our monitoring data, everything that has to do with surface water gets entered here. So for the SWIMS system, you do have to have an account. And for an account, you have to have what's called a WAMS ID. Super easy to sign up for. You just put in like your name and email, and it generates an ID for you. You can use that across other state applications as well. Once you have that WAMS ID, you activate it. They'll send you like an email confirmation. You just click a link in your email. Once you have that all done, you can send a copy of the WAMS ID username to either the DNR SWIMS email address, or I put mine in there because I'll just be totally frank with you, DNR is pretty slow, especially with SWIMS stuff, just to be totally frank. So if it's setting up an account, I can certainly do that for you as well. So that WAMS ID username, and then also any projects that you'd like associated with your account. So if you have like a Clean Boats, Clean Waters project going on, you can say like, hey, can you put the 2025 Clean Boats project under my SWIMS account? Yes, I can do that for you. So when you log into SWIMS, this is the page that you're going to see. And I'm just going to walk you through how to find information, because it can be kind of intimidating at first, but it is really not that difficult. So when you get to this page, there's a couple different options you can choose to search by. I usually use projects, stations, or people. That just tends to be the most straightforward thing to find. You can like type in your own name and find your projects you're associated with. You can type in, you know, a lake name and find the projects with that. So those are the ones I find, I tend to find are the easiest. So on this page, you're gonna select whatever you want to search by. In this case, I use projects. So you'll click projects, you'll click the little find button. And that's going to bring you to another really intimidating screen that I promise is not as intimidating as it looks. So these are all the search parameters that you can search by, but really you only need to fill out maybe 2 or 3 of these boxes to find pretty much anything on SWIMS. So for the example, I used Ashippun Lake again. So I wanted to find clean boats, clean waters data from Ashippun Lake. So those are the only two fields that I filled in for the search. And when I search that, I get all of the related projects to clean boats, clean waters for Ashippun Lake. So if you get to this point and you're like, okay, I'm kind of interested in all of this data, what you would want to do, there's this little paper icon in the upper right-hand corner. And if you click that, it's going to download an Excel file of all of the data that you see listed here. So if you wanted everything from 2019 to 2024 for this, cool, that's where you can download all of it into one file. If you just wanted one specific project, so in this case, we'll say the Ashippun Lake 2024 Clean Boats project, you can click into that for that little blue project ID. And when you click in that, you're going to get this project overview page. And once again, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a download all button, and that's going to download just what's related to the 2024 project. And that goes for all projects throughout SWIMS, regardless if it's clean boats or something else. Also from this page, you can see on the bottom here, this green bar, that's going to tell you all the information about the project that you could ever need. So if you want to see people related to the project, if you want to see specific monitoring events, you can click through those and get to that data really easily. And again, if anyone needs help, just let me know. I am happy to help you with SWIMS things. I know databases are not the most fun thing and they're kind of confusing for a lot of people, even me sometimes. So if you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to me with that. And then my last little plug for me, we have a lot of volunteer opportunities throughout both counties. There's a lot of great work that gets done in this program, but also a lot of it that really can't get done without volunteers. So this is my thank you. If you are a volunteer, have ever volunteered for the counties in the past, thank you so much. We do have an AIS newsletter that I advertise any future volunteer events in, and you'll get a little sign up link for that at the end as well. Waukesha County has a citizen science webpage. They do really cool surveys, even not AIS related. So our conservation biologists will do like snake surveys and stuff like that. They're really interesting. So even if you're interested in volunteering outside of AIS, there's really cool stuff on there as well. And then on this right-hand side, these are some of the projects that we do, and I have links to information about those on the form that I'll send out to you guys as well.
Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about how we fund our program. So I had said earlier, it costs us about $78,000 a year to run our program. That includes everything from the coordinator to the supplies to the interns. And again, I wanted to highlight that there was a change in the funding for our program from the Wisconsin DNR that essentially dropped from $50,000 a year down to about $18,000 from the state of Wisconsin. So what am I doing about it? Well, first of all, I have made our AIS program grant eligible through the Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. There are grants that they send to us. They're called County Conservation Staffing Grants. And so our program now is eligible. The challenge is we run out of money after about 1.5 of our 8-person staff. So right now there's no DAT cap SWIRM dollars going into it. But if there was, and you may see this in the budget discussions right now, there's a lot of enthusiasm around increasing the amount of money that goes into county conservation offices. And so I would put a plug in there that if you know somebody that has control over state funding, tell them county conservation is a good thing. That's how we would use those dollars. There are some county dollars into this program as well. And then those administrative fees that I referred to is also put back into the program. So if we get around $400 from each of our lakes groups and we're doing 9 of them, that brings in another $3,000 to $4,000 to help us offset those costs. There are some groups that do voluntary financial contributions for us, and we very much appreciate that. there's two different ways that well, there's one primary way that we've historically done it, and that is through the lake organization contacting us and said, please send us an invoice and we will send you fill in the blank, $1,000. The important part of this is for us to get in front of folks like yourself so that this can be planned for at your annual meeting. So let's say you're having your annual meeting in August, you're setting your budget for the following year. To budget for a contribution to the county's AIS program is really important. If we don't hit that opportunity to get in front of a group and say, hey, would you like to give us a contribution? And we've seen this ebb and flow over time. Sometimes there's good years and then other times it completely dries up. So wanted to put a pitch out there. What we're also doing is we're providing an opportunity for people to make donations to our program through our county website. And it's being developed right now. The nice thing about this is you don't need to create an account to do it. You can check out as a guest, but it's very similar. Our parks programs have similar donate now type opportunities where you can go in there and donate $10 or whatever fits for you. When I was talking about those invoicing, that's set up through our county financial system. So that's a little bit more laborious, but let's say your lake district wants to give us $1,000 per year. We'll set you up as a vendor. And then that way it's really easy for us to send you an invoice. So that concludes the bulk of our presentation around AIS. I hope that you really enjoyed what we told you today. Amanda, I think, does a fantastic job. I might be a little biased, but I think the wealth of knowledge that she brings and her, I would say her candor and her ability to provide the type of resources to folks is outstanding. So if you like what you heard today, tell a friend.
Alan, thank you for that, and Amanda, thank you for that. We do have several questions, starting with Brian. This one's for you, Amanda. Transferring from water body from water body within the same lake or river system. How does that fit into this system?
So I'm assuming you're saying like if you go in an outlet of a lake or something, like a lake into an outlet river, if they're connected, flowing connected, I'm not concerned about it. If it's something where you're like portaging a long distance or a fairly significant distance, then I would certainly be mindful of it. Remove what you can from your watercraft, drain the water that you can from it. But yeah, if it is a connected system, especially downstream, it's less of a concern there.
Yeah, Brian here. Yeah, this is actually part of the Oconomowoc River system, and there's a neighboring lake who wants to put a pipe from their lake that's isolated into ours. And clearly AIS is a huge concern with doing something like that.
Sure.
So I can reach out to you separately.
Okay,
We can
sure.
chat.
Sure.
All right. Now we've got another one for you, Amanda. How long do mussels and snails live outside of water?
Ooh, not very long. So the reason that we ask the question with the Clean Boats survey, where it's like, have you been somewhere within the last 5 days? That's a question we ask people. Typically 5 days is the period that we consider something to be disinfected or no longer viable out of the water. So if you have something with zebra mussels on it, it's been out of the water for 5 days or more, typically considered decontaminated, right? So I would say within that 5-day window, most things are going to be no longer viable. There are some exceptions to that, like with the New Zealand mud snail that I mentioned, those can live out of the water for up to like 30 days, which is kind of crazy and unfortunate. So yeah, there are exceptions to that, but kind of that 5-day window is generally accepted for most things.
All right. Thank you for that. And then another one from Brian. Are you automatically involved in any AIS work between lake management districts and DNR, or do we need to reach out to them separately?
So I work really closely with DNR. If you guys are familiar with Patrick Sewula, he's the AIS biologist for Southeast Wisconsin. I work very closely with him. We talk pretty much every day. So if there's specific AIS projects that are happening within my two counties, I'm generally familiar with it or involved in some way. It's going to be a little bit less, or a little bit, I suppose, different than what Patrick does, since our program is a bit more like education outreach type stuff. But typically, we're at least informed of it, if not involved in it, pretty much automatically.
All right. Another one for you, Amanda. Does Washington County have the same mapping as Waukesha?
So no, they don't. They have their own GIS system, but it's not like the oh, why is this unplugged? Did you plug that in? Thank you. Sorry, my computer is telling me it's gonna die even though it's plugged in. So they have a GIS mapping system, but it's not like the one that we have that I showed you that's like AIS related. It's something to certainly think about. I would say that we're very blessed here in Waukesha County that we have a really competent GIS team and LIS team. So they have the capability to take that on and create that app for us. And it's just something that Washington County doesn't necessarily have. So I think that's kind of the difference there.
And I'm just going to share that document with all the links right now for everyone.
Just gonna make sure this is charging.
And then we had another question. What is the effect of chlorides on invasive species?
So I don't know of any, like, we're good. Okay, the computer's good. So I don't know of anything specific. Jake, feel free to chime in if you have any experience with this. But I haven't heard of any specific like research or papers or studies that have come out with chlorides having specific impacts. I know that sometimes they can boost plant growth in some ecosystems, but I guess I would have to say that I can get back to you on the details of that.
I know what Sewer Pack is currently working on in the final stages of the chloride study for southeastern Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And I don't know what the findings of that are exactly. We'll have to wait and see. That should be coming out here in the next, I think they said second draft of that's going to the board, and then they hope to have it published by July of this year, if I'm not mistaken from talking to
I
Justin.
think so.
But yeah, I mean, chlorides are a whole nother issue. Any other questions for anyone, from anyone, before we call it a night? Hearing none, I would like to thank Amanda and Alan for joining us tonight and all of you for being here. Alan, did you have anything? Oh, yeah.
I would like to put a plug in for Lake Country Clean Waters. I sit on the board of directors with a handful of other talented individuals. We're a little physician heavy and attorney heavy. So if that aligns with your likings, please let us know if you have something to offer to us. Lake Country Clean Waters Association is a not-for-profit organization, and similar to what I was putting a call out for voluntary contributions to our program, Lake Country Clean Waters has the same needs and also has the same opportunities for those volunteer contributions. If you go to our website, you'll see a donate button up in the upper right-hand corner, and I would recommend donating money to our programs. That money, just like the $10 that was charged for you to join us today, helps support our programs throughout the year. And it includes the quarterly meetings, the Healthy Lakes Conference, the Clean Water Festival, and a number of other activities that we do. So we really do appreciate that.
So again,
Go ahead.
Alan and Amanda, thank you, and everyone for being here tonight.
Real quick plug, we do record all of our Zoom meetings, and so we have a YouTube channel where you can go back and look at previous presentations and quarterly meetings. And then I also want to put a plug in for the Healthy Lakes Conference. I know it's way out into the future, but Thursday, September 18th, we will be doing the Healthy Lakes Conference again. We've gotten some good feedback from our partner lake groups about what are the topics that are of most importance to us. So I hope you understand that we're listening to that feedback and trying to provide you meaningful and entertaining presentations. So this one, again, we're going back to the Oconomowoc Community Center this year in the city of Oconomowoc. It's beautiful facility that overlooks Lac La Belle.
Thank you. I will be there. All right. Hearing no other questions, thank you guys and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.